Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video, I want to talk about toxic relationships and letting go of toxic relationships, to be precise. And I will be focusing a bit on family because I feel like that's the genesis of most of the interactions that we have with people outside in life in general. The first example, the first experience you have of interacting with people and building connections is that one that you have within your family. And if it's a good one and people are supportive of each other and you experience a lot of love, you are most likely going to share that with other people. However, if it's lacking in love and support, then you are very, very likely going to want to seek that support that you lack from the home outside. And that definitely makes you pray for people who are very manipulative because they can sense that you are looking for something and they will take advantage of that. It's not always the case, but it usually is the case. So what do you do when the people that you care for the most, the people that you love, are the ones that hurt you the most? You know, no betrayal ever by friends have ever affected me as much as the ones that have been done to me by my family. And by my family, I'm not talking about my parents, my nuclear family, although there is some toxicity in there because I have half siblings, and I mostly experience the toxicity from my half siblings. But my parents tried their best to give us as much support as they could. So I will be starting. I need to find a place because it's so really, really hot. I need to find some shade. Let me find somewhere to sit down and get out of this hot sun. So I definitely have projected some of that trauma into the relationships that I go on to make, into the connections that I went on to make, because I'm making changes to that now. And I seek support because I didn't get a lot of support from my extended family. It was such that I was the scapegoat. I was the one that was always put forward for the guilt ride and the shame and the manipulation. And I know that it was mostly because I refused to conform to what everybody else did. So I'm talking about cousins and aunties, not so much uncles, but mostly the females in my family, where I think we have a lot of females in my family, actually. It's probably like 80% females. Okay, no, 70% females and 30% men in my family. So there was quite a lot of toxicity going on there. But like I said before, the betrayals that I've had from friends are nothing compared to those I've had from family members. You know, I've been the one that people would talk about. You know, so if you've ever been put in a situation whereby you are always the topic for discussion, you are always the one that is spoken ill of, you are the one that is always used as a bad example, as the black sheep of the family, then you probably know what I'm talking about. And that was me for a very long time. And it is really difficult to let go of that dynamic. It's really difficult and lonely to just turn your back on all of that, because those are the people that you have known since you were a child, right? And you know, like they say, family, you keep your family. You know, there's no one like family should always be put first, right? But in my case, I didn't have that kind of family that I wanted to put first in my life. And so it was really tough for me. I found myself really in a hard place, trying to please them, trying to be, or should I say, trying not to be the bad child. So like on my father's side of the family, we had a matriarch, And so she was the one that everyone deferred to. She was the one that her words were law, right? She was the one who determined who was good and who was bad, who was worth emulating and who wasn't. And of course, you had to do what she wanted to do in order for her to make you the golden child. So everyone was kind of fighting for that position of the golden child. I had cousins who would take every opportunity to report any wrongdoing that I might have done. Now, I'm not saying I was a perfect child or that I was a good person. You know, I made my mistakes like every other young person did. I messed up sometimes and I made mistakes, like I said before, but I didn't feel like I had to be put on the spotlight like that because I didn't do that to any of the others. You know, no matter what I noticed, I just kept things to myself and I was ready to support them, but I didn't get that from them. Now, you might ask, where were my parents during all of this? Well, unfortunately, they were not exactly there because they were struggling to make ends meet. So they were always working. And so I was kind of like left alone. I'm the last child in my family, and my elder brother is 5 years older than I am. So I didn't really have a sibling that I could go to whenever these things came up, you know. So they would report me and they would backbite me. And sometimes they would even create lies just to put me down, you know. And I really couldn't get, I knew I was different in the sense that, like I said earlier, I refused to conform. I knew my left from my right. I knew what I wanted for my life, and I knew that I didn't want it to be dictated by somebody else just because she was the oldest or she had the most money, right? I wanted to be the author of my own life. And I, you know, I didn't follow the usual rituals. I didn't like gatherings that much because, again, I'm introverted. So I preferred my own company. I liked the company of books. And they didn't like this very much. You know, my aunt wasn't crazy about that. And so it was kind of like they were put on me. I don't think they were asked to do that. They just decided to monitor me. I knew that they were always just waiting for me to fail, waiting for me to make the wrong move so that they can all, you know, laugh at me and see, you see, you decided to take your own way, to take your own path, and you see that you were wrong. I'm not saying that I'm right. I've made mistakes, like I said before, but I am content in the fact that I know that any mistakes I made was because I made them, not because someone else made me make them or because I fell into a trap. It was something that I decided to do. And that is, it's not being selfish when you decide to be in charge of your own life. I mean, look at it this way. You think that you are being selfish because you are putting yourself first. And you are putting yourself first as a slave, kind of as a slave for the other person, for the people in your life. What do you think that they are doing when they keep taking and taking away from you and give you nothing back in return? Or just give you very, you know, paltry support in return? They are putting themselves first. That's what they're doing. That's what ultimately most people do, you know. When we are born, the first thing we do is we cry. We cry for attention. We put ourselves first. It's a human instinct and desire in all of us to want to come first or to want to feel comfortable and happy. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with that. When I think about it now, in effect, I think that when I then went out to make connections with other people, I ended up in toxic friendships because I was seeking the support, I was seeking the love that I didn't get from my family. And I was trying to provide that, perhaps in excess, to other people in hopes that I was going to get it back. But unfortunately, it always came back to bite my ass, you know. I remember my husband always telling me that people would betray me and people would stab me in the back and I would make up excuses for them, you know. And that's what we tend to do when we're in a situation like this. If you find yourself in a toxic relationship, you focus on the good times, you focus on the good memories, and the experiences that the great times that you thought you had together, and you make excuses for them, like, oh, but she's really nice when she's nice, or but he's really loving when he's loving. He has a problem, he needs help, maybe I can help him, maybe I can change him or her. But the truth of the matter is that we can't, we can only hope and we can only try our best, but we can't bring people to the point of change. That last step, they have to take it. It's like the parable of taking the camel to the drinking hole, but you can't make the camel drink the water. Yeah, that is very, very true. And so I finally came to a point where I knew that this had to stop. I had to find a way out of this, otherwise they were going to really pull me down. It was tough, it was really, really hard. I felt like I was sinking, I felt like I was losing myself, I felt like I wanted to be the kind of person that they would love and that they would support. But ultimately, I knew that I was going to lose myself if I continued in that way. And so I had to find my way to the surface, which was very lonely. It was extremely lonely. There is a lot of grief and sadness that comes with letting go of relationships, especially if they've been there for many, many years and it's all that you know, right? But then I learned some things along the way. I took some notes here. I'm going to read out 3 lessons that I learned from breaking off of the toxic. 3 lessons that I learned from breaking out of the toxic cycle that I found myself in. So the first is, it's better to be lonely for a while than to be constantly drained by your toxic relationship with someone. No matter who that person is, family or friend, we only have one chance at this life, at least this very life. And if you want to live it to the fullest and you want to have peace and joy, then you have to realize that you might be better off by yourself than being surrounded by people who are drowning you. They're killing you anyway. They're killing the essence of you anyway. So what's the point of holding on? Number 2 is, true healing requires space from people who poison your spirit. So if I don't have the space, I cannot grow. If I want to take up space in my own life, I have to make room for me to be me. The final thing is that after you've done these 2, you can then begin to understand your true self-worth outside of what you can provide for others. And that's also a big mistake that people like me often make, is that we think that if we try to provide for the people in our lives, if we try to fill up the gaps, the holes in their own lives, perhaps they are hurting from some trauma that they have, and we feel like, okay, I can be the plug to that trauma, then we're doing ourselves a huge disservice, because most often they do not value us as much as we hope for them to value us. We get disappointed many times. There are some people who would appreciate that and they would show it, and those are the people worth keeping. But those who would never appreciate and always complain and always have something negative to say about you, those are the people that you have to let go of. And I let go of my siblings. I let go of one of my sisters because she never seemed to understand. No matter the conversations that we had, she just never seemed to understand how much she was dragging me behind. And I remember times where she betrayed me. I remember times like when my mom died, she was the first person. I don't think it was even 3 days later, and I heard, that she was spreading rumors about, and I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it, because I was like, our mom just died. Like, come on, we should be unified now. We should be closer. And then years later, when she needed help, she kept coming to me, and I tried and I tried, and I told her how I felt and I told her what I thought, and she just thought that saying sorry was going to be enough, and then she continued the whole toxic cycle again. And so I just had to cut off completely from her. So if you find yourself at a crossroad where you are not sure what to do, whether to let go or not, or if you are thinking about letting go, then here are some suggestions that I have for you. The first one is that you have to acknowledge that there is a toxic dynamic going on in your relationship, whether that it be with your family, friend, or even a romantic relationship. Okay, you have to acknowledge it. You can't keep the wool on your eyes all the time. You have to take the wool off and see it for what it really is. So if they are cheating on you, if they are lying about you to others, if they put you down, if they criticize you most of the time, if they don't give you constructive criticism, if you come up to them and you say, hey, look, I've done this, I've achieved this, and they just belittle you, you have to recognize it for what it is. And it is sabotage, it is manipulation, and you don't need to keep those people in your life. Okay, so acknowledge it. It's gonna be painful, but it's something that has to be done. The second thing I would suggest is that you have to then evaluate and determine what you're going to miss in the relationship versus what you're going to gain outside of the relationship. So if you're going to gain much more than what you're going to miss, then it's time to let go. Once you have determined this, then you have to stop trying to please them. You have to stop trying to be their golden person, their golden girl or their golden boy. You have to stop trying to live up to their expectations. Maybe, you know, wait for them to live up to your expectations first of all. See how they feel. If they have to be the one always trying to please you, always trying to win your approval, it's very easy to go back to old habits. You know, old habits die hard, they say. It takes more courage, more determination, and bravery to break free of old habits. And that's what you want to do. So limit the contact that you have with such people. The more you limit that contact, the less toxicity you invite into your life. Loneliness is not where you're headed just because you have let go of toxic relationship. Actually, it is just the beginning to you taking control and building yourself a new life where you can build better connections. You know, the biggest lie is that, oh, I will never meet someone else who will treat me this way. I will never be able to find my tribe. I will never be able to find a good friend. But that's a lie. And that's a lie that's keeping you back. So guys, that's all I have for you today. Let me know what you think. Have you ever been in a toxic relationship? How did it feel? Did you let go of it? And how did you let go of it? I would be curious to hear from you guys. As always, I remain Isabella, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.